Hello everybody, welcome back to Small Room Audio. Today we're going to be talking about a preamplifier, and this is it. It's quite smart looking, isn't it? As you might be able to see there. It's by a company from Poland called Khozmo Acoustic, and you might notice underneath there it says passive preamplifier. What's a passive preamplifier? And why should I give a monkeys about that, you might ask? Well, it's a question I kind of posed myself. So normally I would just use a preamplifier, which you plug into the wall. But you don't with a passive preamplifier. There's no power to it at all. It simply goes through some resistors and attenuates the signal. Why would you do that? Good question. Well, first of all, you might want to do it because there's no electrical interference. There's no noise floor because it's just passing through to a power amp from source to amplification. Okay, good. But it's not as simple as that, is it? Because what you lose potentially with the gain stage is the ability to pep up that signal and potentially make it a bit more dynamic. And that's been levelled against a lot of passive preamplifiers in the past that, yeah, they sound good, but they're a little bit flat sounding, maybe. So I thought I'd give it a go, and I did quite a lot of research into passive preamplifiers before I got this one. Why did I get this one? Because I heard that it was very good, and I liked the look of it as well. It seemed to be really well made, and it is. Now I've got this unit here, it's got the kind of wood accents on the side. I went for kind of one of the slightly more expensive models here, which has dual volume controls. You can adjust the left and right channels independently, and it also comes with a remote control and a display on the front. Now, to power the remote control and display, you have got on the back a power connector here, a DIN. Now that goes to an external linear power supply, so it's not in the box, so you keep all of the passive element pure and passive, so it doesn't kind of corrupt it with any power. But it's quite cool when it's on. I'll try and get a little video of it because it shows you the numbers, which basically show you the number of steps in the volume control, and the actual quality of the volume control knobs. Very good. It's very satisfying. It's brilliantly well made. You can specify when you order it what your inputs and outputs are. So on my one I've got XLR inputs and one each of RCA and XLR outputs. So it gives me choices in terms of power amplifiers, because if I go at I'll try again, put my teeth in. If I go from the source via XLR, that's normally a preference, but then output wise, if I've got, say, my Hypex Nilai, which is XLR in only, I would use the output here, versus, say, a tube amplifier, which generally has RCA inputs as a rule. I mean, a lot of tube amplifiers these days do have XLR as well, but a lot of them still don't. They tend to preference the RCA. So it gives you options, and say you could have both RCA, both XLR if you want to on this one. And there's lots of different variants of this as well. You can have one which has a source select, and you can have different inputs for sources, and just have one central volume control as well. So, you know, you can mix and match and create what you want, but this is what I wanted because I quite liked having the ability to muck around with the independent channels, because sometimes I'm a bit lazy and I just kind of plonk the speakers down because I review a lot of different stuff, and then if I don't get that perfect center image and it's slightly to left or right, do you know what, you could just up the volume on one channel or the other and it just locks it in the center, and that's, you know, the lazy way to do it, and I'm a little bit lazy. Anyway, inside here you have some, oh, to put that down, it's quite heavy actually for a box. Inside there you have resistors on each of the channels, and as you turn it, the resistors switch on and off, and they give you an attenuated volume control. Now what's interesting about this is, even though this is passive, you can have different flavours of sound. I know. So why do you have different flavours of sound? It depends what you're using as those resistors. So I've got AMRT resistors in here. You can get AMRG resistors, and they will sound a little bit darker, according to Arak, the man who owns the company and oversees the build of these units. And the AMRT unit here, I said to Arak, the owner, I said, give me something which is neutral and beautiful sounding. I don't want dark, I don't want bright, just something in the middle which gives me a good representation of your product. And that's what he's given me. It is an AMRT, very neutral, very pretty sounding passive preamp. what does it sound like other than pretty? Well, why am I saying it's pretty, first of all? The noise floor is pretty much non-existent, which means you've got a lot of detail. It's never presented in a strident way, and it didn't matter what power amp I put with this, whether it's Hypex Nilai, I went straight into the power section of my Luxman 595, or put it with Purify, or any of the other bits and pieces that I've reviewed over the last few months I've had this, the character was always the same, which is pretty. Lots of detail, nice big wide soundstage. If the track allowed it, you've got that sense of layering depth as well, assuming your partnering source is capable of doing that. What it didn't do though, and this has always been leveled at passive preamps, is give you that massive macro dynamic bang. It was dynamic and you get used to it, but it's not a party cinematic preamplifier. If you're going to use this for home cinema or in your stereo setup, I probably wouldn't advise it. If a car blows up and throws the actor across the screen, you're going to feel it and it's going to sound good, and it certainly won't sound bad in any way that it's hard or bright, but you're not going to be terribly excited by it. So there is a trade-off, I have to say, but the trade-off depends on what you like to listen to, because if you're not into dynamics, but you're into detail and you're into resolution, this is amazing for the money. It kind of kicks the arse of quite a few more expensive preamplifiers. And something in the same sort of price range there might be a shit Freya, Freya Plus. I had that for many months, and it was an exceptionally good preamplifier, but it sounds completely different to this. It has a higher noise floor. It won't give you as much detail as this. Will it sound as pretty? Well, it depends on what tubes you put into the ship Freya. And for that reason, the fact that the Freya can go passive, it can go to a FET stage, or it can go active with the, well, FET stage is active, but go active with tubes, gives you 3 different flavours of sound. You're only going to get 1 flavour of sound with this. So you have to be very sure that that is what you want to get. But for me, the passive stage in here sounds better than the passive stage in the ship Freya. Another ship product, the Sys, that's a very cheap and very good value product. That's a passive preamplifier as well. That doesn't sound as detailed, doesn't sound as dynamic as this, even though this does have dynamic limitations. It's still more dynamic to me than the Sys. And that's probably to do with the way that the sound is passing through all of those resistors. Now, let me show you one of those resistors so you can get a feel for what's inside the Khozmo here. I'll put up a picture so you can see it. I think that's really cool. Look at all of them. It's just in a row around it, and it's really quite amazing to look at. I think that is fantastic. So who buys the Khozmo? That's the key question. Well, look, if you preference detail, resolution and beauty, this is a fantastic choice for you. Also, you don't have to use any electricity when you're powering it, particularly if you don't get the non-remote control version. So, you know, that's one less thing to draw energy from the wall, which is quite expensive. What it doesn't give you, who shouldn't buy it, is someone that wants to do home theatre duties, that wants excitement, boom and bombast, because although this is dynamic, it's not that dynamic. It's also not something that is going to give you loads of gain. So you need to make sure your source and your output match. If you've got any worries about that, then talk to the owner, Arak, who's very happy to answer any questions. Actually, he was really helpful when I ordered this. I have bought this actually because I think it's a fantastic tool for reviewing, because although it does add a smidge of colour, and it is only a smidge depending on what resistors you're putting in there, it will show you the difference in sources very clearly, particularly if you've got a very neutral power amplifier like the Hypex Nilai or a Purify amplifier on the other side of it. So yeah, I think this is really good value, and you can spend, you know, a few £100 up to almost £1,000 on a Khozmo, or you can go proper high end with the same company and get something that's called a Hatter preamp, which is their sister company, also run by the same people, and get something which is all singing and all dancing. Or you could go and get something like a Music First baby reference, which is a different way of doing it using transformer. You've got autoformers, and Icon do passive preamps as well. I don't have any of those here, although I've heard a couple of them in the past. They do things slightly differently, some a little bit more dynamic. But they're certainly not in this price range, and for the money here, this is absolutely fantastic. I would love to hear the new shit Kara, because that has a passive stage, and it also has a really pepped up gain stage as well. So if I get a chance to get hold of one of those and review it, I will get the Khozmo out again and we will see how the two compare. But as a passive preamp experiment, this was a lot of fun, and I would highly recommend it if you want to go down that path to check out Khozmo, because they represent value for money and quality, and I was very much impressed. Anyway, that's it for today. If you like this video, please do like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here very soon.